Hey everybody, Jesse with Soleil Guitars here. Today we're going to be taking a look at how I apply a Tru-Oil Finish to a guitar body and walking through some tips and tricks, things to look out for, and just general knowledge of the way I like to do things. So I appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoy the content, and without further ado, let's get into it.
So what you're seeing me do here is take some ultrafine synthetic steel wool, and I'm just going to go over the surface fairly lightly, just to remove any high spots or any kind of dips or valleys or anything like that. Any buildup. Just try to get the surface as smooth as I can get it without really digging into the previous coats. So you don't want to apply a whole lot of pressure here. I know a lot of people use the gray synthetic steel wool. It's equivalent to a 4-aught steel wool. If you put your finish on really thin, going with the grain, you shouldn't really have a whole lot to correct. So I like to just use the ultra fine, but just going to go over the whole surface, make sure you get all of those spots that really need some attention just to prepare for the next coats. So this is after about 6 or 7 coats. I took quite a lot to soak into the wood to start building it up to the point where I felt comfortable knocking it down just a little bit. But yeah, once you get all that knocked down and smooth and even, then you can start applying your next coats. And that's what we're going to do in the next section of this video. Alrighty, folks, so what you saw before is me just scuffing up the surface with some ultrafine synthetic steel wool. Don't use steel wool because it's a real pain to clean up all the little particles that it leaves behind, and then they can get stuck in the finish, and it's just an absolute nightmare. I like to use the extra fine in between coats because I find that the process that I use doesn't really leave much of an uneven surface when it comes to putting on Tru-Oil. So if you do find yourself getting an uneven surface, you might have to go with the gray pad, and I think that's equivalent to 4-aught steel wool. But anyway, we're going to move on here and just show you the process, or at least how I like to do things when applying a Tru-Oil finish. What you're seeing here, I think, is about 6 coats. I don't do any grain filling or anything like that. It's just a personal preference of mine. But it does tend to, the first couple of coats tend to soak up quite a lot of the Tru-Oil. So you kind of got to put the first probably 3 coats on pretty heavy. All I'm doing is taking some t-shirt material and like a 6x6 kind of a square that I just cut up out of a bigger sheet. Roll up a little ball on the inside till you get something similar to this. And then using Birchwood Casey Tru-Oil gunstock oil finish. I like to get it pretty saturated, and I always leave the film on it as well because it helps to keep this whole bottle from drying it out if you're not going to use it right away. But that's something you need to be careful of. So you just want to make sure that your surface is nice and clean, no dust particles, anything like that. You can use a clean rag to go over it. Sometimes if it's particularly dusty in the shop, I'll use tack cloth to go over and get everything cleaned up. Basically, I just get it nice and saturated so the inside ball holds a lot of Tru-Oil. And then a piece of
dust off of there. I don't like to use a swirling motion because later on you're going to find that you're going to have swirl marks that you're going to have to try to remove. So you always want to go with the grain. It's a lot easier to hide those marks. And at this stage, it shouldn't be soaking up too much of this Tru-Oil. I don't press down really hard. I don't do, I guess what they call a French polish, as far as pressing down really hard to kind of push it into the material. You want to keep it wet. This stuff tends to dry up pretty quick, especially if your shop is warm and dry. So you just want to keep going with the grain. Don't let it pool up. Just kind of keep it spread out fairly evenly. It goes on really, really thin, you'll find. My lighting's not so great in here, but you just want to make sure it's not runny or you can't really see the streaks or anything like that. Once you get about 6 or 7 coats in, like I said before, it doesn't soak in near as much. You start to kind of build. On these figured maples, I tend to go about 600 grit, and then I start applying the Tru-Oil. 400 grit on this stuff I think is a little too low, and then I think anything higher than that, and you're probably going to run into issues where it's not going to soak in all that well. But really, it's kind of up to you how you want to do things. This is just the way I do it. So, another thing to note: be careful around your string through holes, bridge mounting holes, your control holes, things like that. You don't want to get too much of this down in there because then it just becomes a pain later on to clean up. So it's just something to think about. We're just going to keep on going until we get a nice even coat. It's not runny, doesn't have a bunch of buildup. Make sure to keep your rag wet, but not too wet. And try to go section by section, because if you kind of go back over an area that you've already been, you'll tend to drag across it where it's already starting to tack up and dry, and then you'll kind of get these ghosty, hazy streaks. And you really don't want that. You don't want to have to obviously work on that later on. So starting a little dry here, we're going to add a little more. And I think some guys like to do the sides first, and then the top, or if you're working on the back, or vice versa. I don't find that it really matters that much. It's kind of really personal preference. I kind of tend to do the top first. Not sure why, I just do. But again, just straight lines. You don't need to press too hard or anything like that. Try not to go over the areas that you've already smoothed out and put finish on, because, like I said, it gets a little tacky. You kind of don't want to have to go back over it again. So, I think that's looking pretty good. Excuse me moving it around. I just don't have the best lighting in here, so. Make sure that's even.
Don't know if I mentioned it before, but you want to use a nice lint-free material. Don't use paper towels. Trust me on that one. The lint from paper towels just absolutely destroys it. It's not something you want to deal with. So, sorry I didn't show the process of me getting up to this point. As far as getting up to about 6 or 7 coats, it's busy in the shop and wasn't thinking. So, anyway, move on to the sides. Same process. Nice even coats. Really easy. Just wipe it on. Don't need to do any fancy swirling motions or anything like that. Even on the first coats, your wood's going to soak up a lot of this stuff pretty immediately. Let me try to move this back just a little bit here. Take a look, see what I got going. You'll notice I don't have this section, if I can get that in the camera, with Tru-Oil, because I have to glue on the neck before I carve this area out and get it all smooth and sanded. So I just kind of put it on the back a little bit to keep the back sealed up until I get to that point. So not going to be part of this video. But again, sorry about the lighting. We're just going to keep moving along, not letting it pool up, making sure to get, sorry about that, as many of those streaks as you can out. I like to put on probably 3 to 4 coats before I knock any unevenness or streaks down with the synthetic steel wool. Since it goes on so thin, it's not really necessary to continue sanding between every single coat, because you're just going to sand right through the coat you just put down. So I just really like using this stuff. It's super easy to apply. It's not toxic. I wear gloves. First of all, because I don't like having to wash this stuff off my hands. It gets really, really sticky. I don't like the smell. I don't like how it feels. I'm a glove kind of guy, and I don't like to get my finger oils mixed in with anything either. So, personal preference. Once we go around the whole thing, just said you just want to make sure it's not streaking or anything like that. So let me just check this real quick. Everything looks pretty good. So kind of bring you in here. I gotta fill that in, but anyway, you just want a nice even coat all the way around. That's just kind of what we're going for here. So once I have gotten top and then the sides, you just want to make sure that nothing is pooled up along the edge. If you do, just kind of take a non really saturated portion of the rag and just kind of clean that up a little bit. Otherwise, it's just something you'll have to deal with later. So make sure cleaned up. Looking pretty good here. So that's really all there is to it. Yeah, it's a really simple process. Once I get to about 12 to 14 coats. I usually stop around there. And then I'll guide you through the process for kind of hand buffing Tru-Oil Finish, because I really don't like using any powered equipment because the coats are so thin. It's so easy to just run right through it and then ruin your guitar. So, until all right, guys. Well, that's all the time I've got here for today. Really appreciate you stopping by and checking out the channel. You've just seen me apply a Tru-Oil Finish after about, I guess this would be coat number seventh or eighth. Typically do at least 12 coats. No more than 20, but maybe like 12 to 16 coats, kind of depending on your wood choice. Yeah, it's a really easy process. It's non-toxic, really easy to apply. As long as you get all your surface prep right and you don't use any swirling motion, you use lint-free rags, you should be good to go. It's really not that difficult. One note, I'm sure you've seen in other videos, this is a drying oil, meaning that as it is curing or drying, it releases heat. You don't want to leave these rags balled up in piles and trash can, anything like that. You want to make sure to lay them out on a concrete floor or a floor you're not worried about damaging. Just lay them out, let them air dry for 24 hours. They'll get really nice and hard. And then if you want, you can throw them in a bucket of water, let them soak, and then dispose of them afterwards. I don't really find that necessary. I just lay them out, let them dry, and then probably a day or two, and then throw them in the trash can. You just want to be very sure to get these flat, laid out, not stacked. Let them fully dry, and then dispose of them, because they will spontaneously combust. It's been well known to happen, so don't let it burn down your house. In any case, thank you for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed the content. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. And hope you guys have a great day, and we'll catch you in the next one.